I'm going to go around the room and just have everyone explain who they are and their role within the organization.
Yeah, well, I'm Justin Heil. Official title is Director of Operations. Have a little bit to do in all aspects of what we do, I guess, as far as making things happen.
My name's Nick Heil. I'm the controller, so I handle all the accounting and finance end of things. I do hold a CDL as well, so I'm a little bit diversified. I can hop into a truck if need be, but most of the time I spend my time on the books.
Dan Heil, founder, trying to do far less than I ever did in the past. Still getting used to that, but it's been a good process so far.
Dottie Heil. I don't have an official role within the organization, but back up to Dan and support of Dan and the kids.
So, it'd be good for everyone to understand a little bit about Heil Transportation. Can you talk a little bit about what you do? Because you're not just your typical trucking outfit, and it'd be great to understand what all Heil Transportation does.
Sure. So, yes, we are a trucking company, but we're much more of a regional trucking company when you think about other trucking companies out there. The vast majority of the work we do is within 100 or 200 mile radius of here in Clymer, New York, and probably 50 to 60% of the business is ag related, picking up milk from farms, delivering them to milk and cheese plants, and that's really our bread and butter. How the business started back in 1978 with our grandfather and our dad. And grew from there, one truck at a time. Dad never had big ambitions to have it become what it has today. Just always, one truck, one little acquisition at a time. It's grown to what it has today. So a little over 50 to 60% is all milk related, and then we have a couple other divisions that are trucking oriented as well, but still very regional. So we haul a lot of juice for a couple of local customers here, Welch's, Refresco, and then we do a lot of local stuff. For example, there's a pallet provider here in town that we do a lot of hauling for. We have a lot of long-standing customers and a lot of long-standing drivers, and have built the operation to about 55 trucks today, a couple hundred trailers, and some warehousing operations, but milk is still our bread and butter today.
Dan and Dottie, before you thought about succession, you actually considered selling the business. Can you talk to us about the thoughts and feelings you were having at that time?
In the interest of an organized transition, yeah, we did consider selling it. My age at that moment in time was 64, and I didn't want to wait until I was physically unable to work the business and have it become an emergency room transfer to anybody. I was looking for an organized transition. Through that process, kids were part of the conversation at numerous points in time. It became obvious that all three of them were interested in working within the business. In the event that I had sold it, I more than likely would have had to been involved for some period of time anyhow. That was not attractive to me. I love being involved with the kids. I gotta say, I probably wouldn't have loved it as much if it had been a private equity partner that I had to work with. And before that process was done, another associate we work with recommended Decisions Associates. Became highly touted, and it's been a great experience so far.
So as you thought about it, and you thought about the kids being involved in the business, what were some of the things that concerned you? Because at the time, we had one son active in the business. Your daughter was transitioning and considering it. What were some of the things and concerns that you had of having all three children in the business?
The primary concern would have been, how can we do something like this and still have them maintain their relationships as siblings? That was a huge concern for me.
And their relationship with you.
Yeah, I really didn't understand how to do that. It was like, how do I bring these three to the table and put them in a position that doesn't have them hating each other after some period of time? That was a huge factor in why I pursued selling the business before we came to this conclusion.
So I want to play on that question. What were the concerns that you had as siblings, coming into the business and, and having others, out being part of it? Is it concerns that you guys each had as you were thinking about, my goodness, now my brother and sisters are going to be with me in the business?
Well, yeah, and I think I could add a little context to, the question you were asking Dad and Dottie about, their concerns or what they were thinking when we were pursuing selling at the time. I've obviously been the sibling involved and have been since 2008 full time. And during that period, we had some manpower struggles with both drivers and some management going on that was making some things difficult. My brother and I had spoken in the past about his interest in coming on board, and that's something that he and I have always talked about doing, is working with each other. And matter of fact, we have our own LLC separately that we haven't really acted on a whole lot, but something we always talked about. And knowing it was Dad's concern that we might not be able to work with each other or end up hating each other, we had a lot of conversations about that, and we weren't as concerned as he was. And I think that's been the great part about this whole process was, working with you guys. Have had insight and real world experience and bringing siblings and families together throughout this process. I think it really took the pressure off.
Yeah, I'd reiterate that. I never had any concerns about actually working with my siblings. I always knew that we could work well together. I always thought that we had skills that complement each other. But when you try and actually make it happen, that is what you guys helped out with tremendously. You put a tremendous amount of structure around actually accomplishing that. Just as an example, we have weekly family meetings every single week. We haven't missed a single one since this process started every Wednesday. And, but before that, being a family, our idea of a meeting probably would have been a couple of drinks at, Dad's table, not necessarily, downtown in a structured business format. So you guys helped us, really put structure around it and identify the ways to, actually get it done.
So we were referred to you by a trusted advisor of yours.
Yes.
What are some of the things you thought about when considering engaging a third party to help your family business succession?
Well, just making this succession an organized transition, defining expectations, everybody's expectations, the kids primarily, and mine, and just trying to work through the process that would ensure success, maintain the family unit as such. Those were big concerns. I knew that their skill sets complemented each other, but at the same time, Ashley had a successful career where she was before. Nick had a successful career where he was. Obviously, Justin did too within our business, but their skill sets are not in the same area, which is a great thing. There were a lot of things that needed organized in a more professional manner than I've done in the past, and you guys helped accommodate that very nicely.
Dottie, one of the things that stuck out to us was that you wanted more of Dan's time. And, Dan was taking calls, all throughout the night. And, and it really, it was time. And so, as you thought about it, and things that you were thinking about as this transition happened, what was it, what did it mean to you to say, I want to start this and engage this succession process, because it was important for you for Dan?
It was important for me, for Dan and our whole family, because he was directing the whole operation of it, which means he was available 24/7. And day to day, that was absolutely fine. But looking down the road, it was not something that was going to continue to work, especially if he wanted to pull back at all. As it became obvious that all of the kids were interested, which we really were not aware for a while. That discussion didn't happen. I think part of it was Dan didn't want to push the kids into anything that he felt wasn't their decision. He wanted it to be their decision. Once that became obvious, then it was important to maintain his relationship with them and theirs with each other. And also, as he directed everything, we needed somebody that was a buffer between him and setting up the whole thing, because he would not have had patience with trying to make the process get where it wanted to get. And that's what we were looking for, is someone who could direct that buffer between him and making that happen and protect those relationships.
This is directed to Justin, Nick, and Ashley. One of the things that we sometimes hear from the children is concern about, oh, mom and dad are bringing someone else in to help win this succession, and there's fear, trepidation. What were some of your initial thoughts as you heard about there's some other party, some business consulting group that's going to come in and help us with this business succession? What were some of your thoughts, concerns, if you don't mind sharing?
I can say I was actually excited about it. I thought, Dad and I, throughout the process of marketing the business, had some discussions, and then after finding out that both my siblings were also very interested, we had some good discussions about it. And I just thought it sounded like a great way to go, in the interest of protecting the relationships and giving it the structure that it needed to happen properly. I never really had any concerns about it. I thought it was a great idea to take a step forward that needed to happen, and I'm ultimately glad we did.
Yeah, I would reinforce that same statement. I was actually really excited for the opportunity. I saw it as an opportunity for us to improve the business, but have a good independent view of our business and our situation. It's something that we always dreamed about, and we would talk about it from time to time. But actually going through all the actual things that needs to be done to make it come to fruition, is another thing, and you guys helped tremendously with that. So I saw it as an opportunity. My last job, I came from a manufacturing position where they asked everyone to, every day, no matter what you were doing, just try and make a 2-second improvement. Try and get better at every little last thing that you do, and that will all add up to tremendous change. So I kind of came in it with that mentality of, hey, this is an opportunity for us to take a good hard look at everything we've done so far and see how it can be made better.
Guess, a lot of organizations will try this on their own. You guys made a decision to go another way and use a third party. This is emotional stuff, right? There's feelings, there's family ties, things that you don't want to. So as you're, Dan, weighing that decision about, okay, they've shown some interest now, I'm in this process, what do you think the risks were of doing it on your own and not having the facilitator that just had you put your hand up and say, no, I need help?
I think it'd be very difficult for anybody coming from a direction that we did to make a transition like this and then have unity, to bring unity to the table, it'd be difficult to, identify the expectations. What do they want to see happen in this business? What do I want to see them do? Accommodating those thought processes is something I think would be very difficult for any founder to do.
I mentioned before that emotions are involved, and a lot of people will hire a consultant saying, I need somebody who will take the emotions out of it. And part of our theory in this is that emotions are real and they're in it. Having gone through the experience, did you feel like we took those things into consideration? That we were a third party where we needed to be, but did we take the time to understand where everybody was coming from, what was important to each individual, and put it all together with those things still in play to make sure that we heard your concerns?
Yeah, I don't believe that you guys took the emotions out of it, and I wouldn't advise that anybody try to. I think that is a big part of it. It's a 45-year road for me. I can't watch that just disintegrate. And I certainly couldn't accept bringing these three into it, knowing that they aren't set up properly. Having them continue to be siblings is highly important to me, at least as important as the success of the business, but ultimately I wanted both.
Yeah, I think we all had several individual interviews before we ever even got together as a whole family. So you guys took the time to get to know us on an individual level before bringing us all together. And to reiterate on my dad's point, it doesn't take the emotion out of it, but you guys do a fantastic job of helping us have conversations that are otherwise hard to have on our own. For example, talking about compensation or, being able to ask the question, hey, why are you guys focusing on that when you've got this elephant in the room over here that you should be focusing on? Every time we got together with you guys, it was very clarifying. It was, we always felt a sense of repurpose and refocus on things. So like I said, you guys are great at helping facilitate conversations that are hard to have on our own that need to happen.
I have a little to add on that too. One of the biggest things that I liked about the whole process was the way you identified who Heil Trans was and Dan's direction of that and what was important to him, and also really got to know the personalities of each of the kids and their strong points and helped them identify their own strong points and work within that. And you definitely knew the business and all the people involved in it, and that really, really helped direct things.
One of the things we talk about with clients is if you're thinking about a business succession, you should be thinking and planning 3 to 5 years in advance. How have you seen, that play out here? What do you think the benefits of thinking about this and doing this? Dan, you said, when I started this, I was about 64. What do you think the benefits of planning 3 to 5 years in advance are? And, because that's a big part of the reason companies are successful.
I don't think it's possible to make a transition like this in a short period of time and do it successfully. It needs to be over a longer period of time. As I mentioned, we're more than 2 years into the succession planning process right now. I'll be 67 tomorrow. I wanted to see this happen before I'm not capable of helping them anymore. I think it's hugely important to give them the chance to ask any questions they may feel they need to ask.
I've got a really good recent example of this actually. So, we're seeing it in conversations with our customers and some of our business relationships. That we recently attended a meeting with one of our major customers where a bunch of other haulers were in the room, and the last time this meeting occurred 2 years ago, there's 22 haulers in the room. This time there's only 16 in the room, but we showed up together as a family unit and management team, and we received several comments from some of the friendly competitors in the room. Said, hey, it's great that you guys have a succession plan in place. I don't have that. Would you guys be interested in purchasing our business when we're ready to sell? And then at that same meeting, the director of operations there, whom we have a great relationship with, has since sent us a letter inquiring, asking us to take on a big farm because they know that we have a plan in place and we can take it on. And I don't think other haulers in the room got that same letter, or not all of them. So we're seeing opportunities from some of our customers because they know we have a plan in place.
And what we're seeing more, especially with some of our larger customers, is their supplier, their vendors, they're working for other people. They want to know, what's your succession plan? Mm-hmm. What is your succession plan? They're getting that question because if you're going to be a key part of our process and a part of our company, I want to know what your plan is. And that's a big deal.
It is a big deal because it was a bit offensive the first few times I actually heard it.
I can't imagine that.
They're putting me out to pasture already.
I can't imagine that.
So
The nerve of him.
to add a few more details to that, so the letter we got, it's at least a $500,000 a year account that we're being considered for because we have a succession plan in place. And then I forgot to mention it's a $600,000 a year account, and one of the big factors for them is their current hauler they were having problems with, and they had no succession plan. We were able to show up to a meeting with that farmer and show them our succession plan, and I believe we got the account because of that. And then after we left that meeting I mentioned earlier,
That's what I was going to say too.
yeah, there's a a long-standing friendly competitor there, about the same size as us. But he's an older guy, probably late 60s.
my age.
Yeah. Dad's age.
He literally
He's an
texted
old-
Dad on the way
Yeah,
home and said,
he-
"Hey,
he-
good-looking family there."
Yeah,
you know?
he texted us literally right after the meeting and said, "Hey, it's really cool that you guys. It looks like you got a good succession plan in place. I'm going to be ready to sell soon. Not quite yet, but you guys are going to have a crack at it." And so those are just three immediate examples I can think of off the top of my head. But I know that's going to show up over and over again.
Yeah, that was a big one. And we've gotten, now that they've been introduced to some of the people I've worked with for years and years and years, gives them a comfort level, and those steer opportunities our way that they would not have steered my way without having a defined plan in place.
Yeah, we've seen it across the industry with people not having succession plans. A couple within the last couple of years, out east, and having a pretty significant effect on the organizations that we work for, with them not having a plan and putting those organizations in a bad position. So,
Yeah.
I think they can certainly appreciate someone having a long-term plan in place that they know is not going to
Yeah,
affect them.
they don't want to worry about the logistics of the services we provide. They just want it to happen.
You just want it done.
Yeah, if they wanted to do it, they would do it.
And they want to be able to count on it's going to be done. It's not how long is this going to last.
But if you are such a critical part of these companies, they can't, what you do, they can't exist without you. And so that's why you got that question from those people that are, that offended you a little bit earlier in your career, or, a few years ago, like, what the heck? Well, they're looking at it and saying, if I don't have a trusted person that's going to, your product can't stand on a shelf for months. Mm-hmm. It has to be picked up. It has to be picked up at a certain particular time. And if they can't count on that, their business is hurt.
Well, yeah, and in the dairy world, they're obligated to pay for that product whether they receive it or not. And we are the tool that helps them receive it.
Okay.
So, no reception doesn't mean no pay.
So they have to have a trust.
They have
to have a trusted
have to.
partner.
Yes.
So
And they've gotten burnt.
as the children, can you talk to the other children that are going to be, listening to this? What are some things that you would, maybe give advice on as they're thinking about succession in their family business? Anything that sticks out?
I would say just be open-minded to the whole process. Just go in with an open mind and ready to go through the process and hear the feedback and allow it to, point you in the right direction or change you. I think a lot of young people might head into this situation thinking, well, I've already got a bunch of ideas that, I already know what we need to do. But this was a really valuable experience, and it's hard to explain the experience until you go through it, right? I think that's part of what's so valuable about you guys is you make us come up with ideas and think of things that we otherwise wouldn't have if you weren't here. And, if you don't have someone doing that for you, then you don't know what you don't know. So I would say go into the process with an open mind and, ready to help it improve you, because that's the goal of this whole thing.
I completely agree with that. That's my feelings on it as well, is that, go in it open-minded and be completely honest about all of your concerns or your ideas so that it's out there for, to collectively work on the whole thing as a unit. Just put it out there and embrace the whole process because it works.
Justin had been in the business a long time. You actually started working with your dad pretty closely, even slightly prior to the engagement. I got the sense that you learned a lot about not just your dad. Everyone knows their dad is a dad, right? But you got to see him as a business owner, and culture in our conversations with Dan was so critical to the organization. And I felt through this process that you've done this really cool job of blending process and new things but with preservation of that culture in mind, like making sure when we process payroll, it is going to happen, and it's going to happen on time, and these people are going to get what they expect, and they're going to get it when they expect it. Can you just talk a little bit about what you learned about your dad as a business owner, not just a dad?
He cares a lot about his employees and wants things, they're going to be done the right way. So, I mean, I kind of feel the same way about things like payroll, getting stuff done on time. I mean, I don't want to do
You almost
anything.
said a key word there.
Don't want to do anything half-assed, so. There's my key word. But no, I mean, I've seen Dad operating the business my whole life. I feel like, I mean, I might not have been actively involved in it, but I've always heard them talk about it and been involved in conversations about it. And I did, I worked, while I was in college, I worked part-time remotely a lot, but I did spend some time in the office on my summers off. So I feel like I've been involved, well, not, obviously as involved in Justin, but at least been around it. And
It's a big operation. It's pretty male-dominated. There's a key group of people in an office that you have mirrored the way the organization treats that group of employees in a way, that wasn't the group your dad interacted with, right? But you do. And it feels like the folks here have welcomed the change and maybe they understand what family ownership means in a way they didn't before. Is that a fair statement?
that's the feedback we've got. I mean, people have told us that they're excited about it and they think it's a great thing that we're all involved. And
Yeah, just here in the office. So Ashley and I's office is right next to each other, and we've got several employees here in the office, and we've heard nothing but great feedback from them. And not just, hey, it's awesome that you guys are here as a family, but specific examples we've heard over and over of, hey, it used to be this way, and now it's this way, and we love that change, and it's basically been because you guys are here now. So I've heard nothing but a bunch of positive feedback from all the employees in this whole process.
Terry talked about culture, and the culture of Heil Transportation is very important to you, Dan and Dottie. You've been able to do some things that are maybe a little different, but maintain the culture. What have you done to maintain the culture as we've transitioned to the next generation?
Well, I think this whole process has, provided some confidence for our employees. Seeing four of us working together as a unit, I think has alleviated maybe some concerns that some of the staff might have of what's going to happen here when the old man does retire. That's a takeaway. I think that has been beneficial to help not only maintain the culture but improve it a bit. I think there's some excitement that's been generated throughout the staff, knowing that, hey, we're going to take this thing and keep running with it and continue to improve. At least that's the goal.
Something I'll never forget, I was down in the garage one night. This is before I worked here at Heil Transportation. I was just down in our service shop working on some, my personal trailer. And, while I was there in the shop working on some things, I overheard a couple drivers talking in the driver room, looking out at the row of trucks out there. And they said, wow, there's a lot of money sitting out there in the parking lot. What's going to happen to all of this when Dan's gone? And that just stuck with me. I remember that night. And I don't know, it's probably maybe a year later that we started this whole process of us all getting involved. So to reiterate what Justin said, I think the benefit has been added structure where it needed to be added. But from a culture standpoint, nothing's changed. It's still a small family-owned business atmosphere in that regard.
You mentioned that's a great story, and one of the things we talk about with our clients is every one of the employees is talking about it behind the owner's back, like what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so how have, you mentioned excitement, but, have there been any conversations with the employees about where we're going and where we want to be as future owners?
It isn't just the employees that we're hearing those type of conversations from. It was customers too. Roundabout way, questions would come up on occasion. It's like, damn, Dan's getting old. What's going to happen with this when he's not around anymore? And that leads to the opportunities Nick referred to earlier, where, if we don't see a succession plan in place, how much more business do we want to do with this organization? We need a long-term future. We've concentrated on long-term relationships with our customers. That's always been highly important. And if you don't have a plan in place at my age, that's gonna take away from your opportunity pool.
Another good example, I mean, a potential business we were looking at acquiring, it recently failed on their end because they don't have a good plan in place. It's something they never talked about. They're a family-owned operation. They don't have kids who are interested in, continuing on the business, and because they don't have a good plan, the deal failed ultimately on their end because of some of their customer concerns. But going back to the employees, I mean, I can't point to on paper and say, this many people stayed because now we have a plan in place, but I'm sure there is a positive number there. I mean, I don't hear comments like what I explained earlier anymore. It's been a lot of, boosted confidence, I think, to a lot of our employees of, hey, I can continue to have a future here and not have to worry about what's going to happen when Dan's no longer involved. Well, and they say nothing about the community impacts too. I mean,
yeah.
We're in a really small town here, and we're the largest employer. And had we not gone through this process and we just sold the business, I think this business would no longer be in this town, and probably 90 plus people would be out of a job here in the local community. So that's a whole nother aspect we haven't even talked about today, is that we retained a business in town too.
Yeah, and in a town this small, that's a significant chunk.
Yeah, that could have had a pretty significant economic impact on the whole community. As far as not that like as you said, we're not top dog but
We're not all that.
yeah, we're not all that, but
Big part of it.
some of the partners that we have in the community probably would have suffered not having that long-standing relationship or business with that. Say the private equity model coming in could have had a real negative impact on a lot of people in the community. So,
Dottie, sometimes as the owner's spouse, what would you tell another owner's spouse this process was for you, and how did it impact you, and what perspective could you share with the owner's spouse?
The biggest impact for this, and I think I probably had the biggest concern of maintaining family, Dan's relationship with his kids and their relationship to each other, because I just think that's the highest value. This process, I think, really eased for Dan this happening, because I think if he were trying to do it on his own, he would have gotten frustrated and perhaps given up. How do you transition everything you've always done on your own, even though it was getting to a point where he should have hired someone else to do that, because it had grown enough that it was a lot and he needed more help. How do you transition that when your preference is just to keep on doing your day-to-day in your job? That's not where you want to go. So this really facilitated that process. And as the spouse, it made things at home much easier also, because there was a lack of tension, I think, that would have been there if he felt all of that on his shoulders.
What would you say to a leader of an organization who's considering Decision Associates as their succession planning partner? What would you tell them?
I would say absolutely do it. And just to reiterate my point earlier, go into it with an open mind, with a mentality that, hey, this is an opportunity to have an outside perspective of my business, and it's a huge opportunity to make improvements. So, to a leader of another organization, if you're having any apprehensions or any negative thoughts about doing something like this, you don't know what you don't know, and outside eyes on your organization is valuable. So I would say absolutely do it and involve as many people as you can, and you'll be very pleasantly surprised with the changes that'll come your way.
yeah, and I'd agree with that statement. I think a leader of any organization has nothing to lose in implementing this process. If nothing else, it'll be, I think, a good eye-opening experience. But I would say going into it, lean on Decisions Associates, Terry and Aaron, lean on their experience, and I don't think you can go wrong.
A lot of people have asked me, why did you do that? Why did you get somebody involved? Didn't you know what you want to do? Yeah, I have a general idea, but asking questions of people, non-inflammatory nature, has helped that process a lot. You guys are very good at that. Like you said, you've also brought other people to our attention that we can use legally, the legal aspect, the accounting aspect. I mean, you've got experience with a lot of different organizations that, through your experiences, helped us determine which other organizations fit us. And that was all part of you guys learning us.
I would say mostly to trust the process. You obviously have a set process and a step-by-step, and as it works through it, you can see it all come together and pan out if you 100% commit to it and trust the process.
It was important for us, so we do a lot of testimonials, and we wanted to do this one different. I was telling Dan and Nick before everybody else came in, this is the first one we're doing as a group. And the reason we wanted to use this, first of all, and I told you the last time we got together, this is going extremely well. You guys have embraced it and are running and such. The other is it's such a, kids have apprehension. Owners have apprehension.
I think a natural inclination would be for anybody to think that, well, these guys don't know my business like I do. How could they possibly advise me on how to transition it to somebody else? But that's a bad perspective. You guys have seen the same game played over and over and over through numerous different businesses. Really, at the end of the day, the issues you're dealing with have different numbers associated with them, but the problems are very common.
There's a common set of, there's common threads in each engagement. Different names, but there are common threads. And those common threads, and I always say, you've heard us say it, we get to do it 13 times a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus once in a lifetime. And, when you're talking about, and the other is literally, this succession isn't going exactly how you intended. You anticipated selling it years ago. Right? Like literally 1 out of 4 business owners, their initial plan on succession happens. That's just the truth. If you think about our numbers, XYZ, they have a plan, but literally 1 out of 4 or so happen in the way that the owner had planned.
So that's what I say. What do you have to lose?
Yeah, give it a run. But
Your fee is a drop in the bucket compared to the impact they're going to feel from not having a plan.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to go to fees, I do think that would scare a lot of people away, but very easy to lose exponentially more through making bad decisions than the cost of your services are. These services are cheap as compared to the losses you could potentially experience without
a plan.
Yeah, without a plan.
You guys have been special for us. You really have. I mean, it's been.
It's special.
But you came into it with you had a sense of self-awareness, right? And you were going through this stuff. And I would say that's been mirrored with all of you. You have this, I know what I am, but I also have empathy for the other players. And you also had this awareness that for it to be, for them, what it's been to me, there has to be a growth aspect in that.
Is this the best thing to do for my child or the worst thing to do to my child?
Well, that was a high consideration in this whole process for me too. That question went through my mind numerous times. Is this the best thing for them or the worst thing I could do to them?
And the other thing is I think we were fully aware that at the point where we are in our lives, as far as to make this happen, it's kind of a one-shot deal. If you're trying to protect everything that you want to protect, do you want to do it yourself and have it be trial and error and just sink or swim and say that didn't work, let's try this? And it's that's not...
You don't get the chance to repeat.
You don't have the experience to set it up.
Well, this wasn't that bad, was it?
No, no.
Yeah. And